Hey, it's Jess. Welcome back. Today I'm here with another Way Back Wednesday where I will be talking about all the books that I read in June of 2022. Looking at my Goodreads, I read a total of 10 books that month. All of them were new, none of them were rereads. The first book that I finished in June was Come Closer by Sarah Gran. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. This is a book that I had started in May. I remember reading it during my lunch break at school one day, and obviously school ended in May. You don't need to know that. It doesn't matter. It's about a woman who thinks she's being possessed. And so it's causing relationship rifts with her husband. She is doing research and just thinks she's getting possessed. A lot of people really like this book. I did not like this book. I think I gave it like a 3. And looking back on it, that was probably generous. Obviously, because it took me over a month to read. And it's not a very long book, so it shouldn't have taken me that long to read. I had heard really good things about it, but when I finally got to it, it wasn't for me. I did not enjoy this one. The next book I read was Hooked by Sutton Foster. This is a nonfiction book by Sutton Foster, who is a Broadway star. She's probably been in like some movies and stuff too, but she was in like Thoroughly Modern Millie, and she was in Thoroughly Modern Millie. She was in something else. She was recently in Sweeney Todd, I believe. Anyway, Broadway star. I love musical theater, so when I saw this at Barnes & Noble, I put it on hold at my library because I don't always buy autobiographies because they're not usually something that I want to read more than once. So this is a biography about Sutton's life, how she got started on Broadway. Her brother is also a Broadway star, and each chapter was about a specific crochet project that she was working on during that part of her life. She correlates it to a project. So the chapters are just a bunch of projects of things she's crocheted throughout her life. I really like crafts. I like to crochet. I love musical theater. Love Sutton Foster. Wonderful voice. So I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was interesting, like an interesting way to write a memoir. If you like Sutton Foster, if you like crocheting, if you like to know how Broadway stars got their start on Broadway, I suggest you check this one out. The next book I read was Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Talked Last by Eric LaRocca. This is the first Eric LaRocca book that I had read. It was, I don't know if this is his debut short story novella, but it was the first one that I'd heard of that was getting really popular. You are following, it's all written through chat forums. There's also true crime stuff between the chapters, but it's basically a woman is posting an antique apple peeler for sale online. A woman wants to buy, starts a dialogue about the antique apple peeler, and then they become friends and they start talking off the chat boards and they email and things get weird. Parts of this are very gross. It is a very short book, less than 200 pages for sure. I can't remember exactly how many. It read really quickly. I really liked this one. I know a lot of people like this one. I know a lot of people that don't like this one. I've only read 2 other things by Eric LaRocca. I like his writing. I think it's interesting. I really enjoyed this book. It was, again, different. It was weird. Parts of it were gross. So if you're looking for something like that, a short, weird, kind of gross book, check this one out. I also just realized I said check this one out or check this out for the last 3 books. So I apologize. The next book I read was Yours Cruelly, Elvira by Cassandra Peterson. This is an autobiography by Cassandra Peterson, who is Elvira. I found this book to be fascinating. I read this book, but I wish that I had listened to it as an audiobook because I'm pretty sure Cassandra Peterson narrates it and it would have been so much better that way. But for some reason I didn't. I wasn't really into audiobooks back then. They're not something that I listened to very much, honestly. And so if I saw a book was available as an ebook or a physical book, I was going to pick that over the audiobook. But I suggest that you listen to this one as an audiobook. It is all about Cassandra Peterson's life, how she got started, and then how she became Elvira. But it goes like all the way up to 2022, which I believe is when this came out, or 2021. It goes up, like it doesn't just stop after she becomes Elvira. She talked about what a phenomenon Elvira was and kind of what it took to get there, and then that's basically what she's known. That's not basically, that is what she is known as now. Most people don't even know her name is Cassandra Peterson. They know her as Elvira, and what a cultural phenomenon that turned into, but then kind of petered out, but still has these like cult followings. Anyway, fabulous book. Loved it. Would definitely read it again, but I would listen to it as an audiobook next time. The next book I read was The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce, possibly. I don't know if that's how you say her name. I don't remember why I have this book. I think I got it from the library. I think I'd been hearing about it. I didn't like this book. I barely remember anything about it. It was supposed to be like a mystery thriller. You are following a detective who come to this like really high class hoity-toity like resort in the mountains in like Switzerland or something. But people start dying, and so the detective is there to like figure out who the killer is. But it used to be like a mental hospital, but now it's like this hoity-toity spa, I think. I don't know. It's the beginning of a series. Did not realize that when I picked it up. Have not read anything else. Don't even know anything else about this series because I did not like this book that much that I obviously like erased it from my brain because I just really didn't care. The book I read after that was Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. This was a 5-star book for me. So, it was nice to go from like a really crappy book to a really great book. I adore this book. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I had heard Jordaline Reeds talking about this book, and so I saw it at the library one day, picked it up, story of my life, and I ended up buying a copy because I love it so much. You are following these two friends who were friends in college, then they grew apart. 10 years. It's been 10 years since they've heard from each other, and then one day Madison calls Lillian and says she's looking for a nanny for her stepchildren, and Lillian's like, okay, why? And Madison is like married to this really famous politician guy, and her stepchildren have a unique ability. Anytime that they get too emotional, like mad or frustrated or anything, they burst into flames. They just on fire. And then once they calm down, they are no longer on fire. Obviously, they don't just like live. Anyway, and so Lillian accepts the job and falls in love with these children, basically. Like, I fell in love with these children too. I loved everything about this book. My friend recently listened to the audiobook, also loved it that way. I've been really wanting to reread this. I might try it as the audiobook, but I don't know. Something about this book, it just hit right at the right time. And every time I think about it, I'm like, that was such a unique book. And I don't know. A lot of people don't like it, but I love this one. I love these crazy children that burst into flames. I love Lillian, who's trying to deal with this and still make a connection with these children who obviously know that they are hated by their father. They are hated by their stepmother. They are hated by the world that knows of their ability. And so they're just looking for a connection. And, they got one with Lillian and they got one with me. The next two books I read were both by Malcolm McDowell. I read The Elementals and Cold Moon Over Babylon. I had heard of these books before, but obviously I'd never read anything by Malcolm McDowell, saw them at my library, picked them up. In The Elementals, you are following, I think, like 2 or 3 families who have these beach houses that they go to. Like, it's these 3 houses in a row. They go there every year, and one of them has basically been abandoned because the beach has come into it. It's like filled with sand and stuff like that. And then, like, I don't really remember what happens, but it basically turns into like a haunted house story. It's like a southern haunted house story. A lot of his books are like deep south. They just remind me of like a Southern Gothic ghost story. I don't remember very much about it. I liked it. I liked it at the time. I remember that has to do with beach houses and sand and a haunted house. In Cold Moon Over Babylon, it is another small southern town. I believe in this one, a girl goes missing and the local police chief is trying to figure out what happened to her. And his kid is a troublemaker. I'm sorry. I read these books. I promise I did. I liked them when I read them. I read them so long ago and I've read so many books since then. I can't remember what they're about. But I really enjoyed them. I would like to read more Malcolm McDowell books. I just haven't seen them at my library, so I haven't had a chance to read more by him. The next book I read was Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I adored this book. It is a young adult, like, horror. Young adult horror, fantasy. It's horror. So you are following a family and this community where the people in the community, the girls are brujas and the boys are brujos. And our main character is a trans man. But their family is not accepting of that. They are supposed to grow up to be a bruja, and how dare you be something different? They have different powers and abilities. Like the brujas have different abilities than the brujos. And then one of his classmates is killed and they're trying to figure out like who the murderer was and still try to deal with this family drama and this community drama because this person like honestly feels like a man. They are a trans man, boy, because it's still a teenager. And so it's all about like the cultural stigma of that. And I don't know. I really, really loved this book. The writing was beautiful. The story was engaging. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I kept turning that page. Parts of it were creepy. It has to do something with a cemetery and a ghost. He can like see the ghost of his classmate that got killed. That's where the cemetery part comes in. Anyway, beautiful book. Beautiful, beautiful. Loved it. It says on Goodreads that it's not like the first one of a series. I don't know if Aiden Thomas has ever actually written a sequel or if there are going to be more in this series. But, I'm fine. Did it end on kind of a cliffhanger? Yes. But it also ended well enough that I would be satisfied if there weren't more books in the series. And the last book I read in June of 2022 was Recursion by Blake Crouch. This is my favorite Blake Crouch book that I have read. You are in a world where people suddenly get false memories and they're just like popping up. So you start where this police officer is on the roof of a woman with a woman who is going to jump because she suddenly remembers she has all these false memories of a family and a husband. But when she like talks to that man, he's like, I don't know who you are. And so she's so confused because, it's this epidemic where all these people are unaliving themselves because they are dealing with all these false memories. And so this detective like is trying to figure out what is happening, where this is coming from. I loved this book. I read Dark Matter before this. I liked Dark Matter. A lot of people like that one. I like Recursion so much more. I still think about this book a lot. And I think about the last few chapters. And it blew my mind. Blake Crouch is an amazing science fiction writer. I know he's written other stuff besides science fiction. I've only read his science fiction stuff. But Recursion, I tell everyone that. I'm like, you like Dark Matter? Check out Recursion. I told that to my dad. I'm pretty sure he liked this one better too. Something about it. I loved the characters. I loved the story. Again, I'm reading it and I kept telling everyone when I was reading it, I was like, I'm reading this book and it broke my brain. I was like, how does it call? How does it connect? What is it happening? Kind because it's very sciencey, but in an accessible way. Like, thinking about it breaks my brain, but in an enjoyable way, if that makes sense. Like, I wish that I could read this book for the first time again, but I also just want to like read this book again because I loved it that much. So I really, really, really suggest that you check this one out. And I know I said I like wasn't going to say that about any other books, but out of the books, you know, there's a couple on here. This is definitely one that you should check out. So those were all the books that I read in June of 2022. Some fabulous books. I think I had 3 or 4 5-star books, but I also had like a couple 2-star books. So that's kind of meh. But overall, a really good reading month. I recommend most of the books that I talked about this video, but again, not all of them. I've made my thoughts and feelings clear about that. So anyway, now I want to know, have you read any of these books? What did you think? All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.